Hey!
Greetings friend, and welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be delving into Everdark Caligo and all the various things that you will need to know to have successful expeditions for this new and difficult boss. This is the new boss-specific relic for Everdark Caligo that you can purchase from the Sovereign signboard after defeating her. It's a little bit better for Iron Eye because he can't take advantage of Chilling Mist like you can for the base one, and inherent and improved physical damage negation is always going to be good for you. You can make a good case for it being used on Duchess as well if you want to be able to still use Hoarfrost Stomp and have Frost applied and have the invisibility from it. This is the relic setup that I chose to go in with my Wilder when I went on this expedition solo. Wilder's Earring is always going to be good with those two specific attributes that work really well together. Everyone's favorite Evergel relic, and then I have one that has fire attack power up +2. One that also works well is anything that has the follow-up attack with greatswords. I didn't use it on this one because I was hoping to be able to get the Cranial Vessel Candle Stand or some other one that might not necessarily be a greatsword. In regards to Nightfarers, Wilder is probably going to be one of your best bets for this fight due to his grapple and ability to stay on top of the boss as it flies around the battlefield. A lot more than other ones, but that's typical for FromSoft Dragon fights. Iron Eye is also going to be another good one, especially if you can start with fire on your bow. Revenant and Recluse can also be really good picks as well if you can get some decent fire, either spells or incantations. You'd want to more than likely fire them not charged, just with how often the boss moves around and how many AoE attacks it utilizes. Aside from the 35% bonus efficiency for fire damage against Caligo, it does also take 15% more damage from blunt sources, things like colossal weapons, hammers, great hammers, things like that. So a fire great hammer or colossal weapon would be extremely effective in this fight. If you can keep the boss staggered, Raider would be a fairly good pick if you can get 2 of the fire colossal weapons. She has a 10% resistance to thrusting damage from things like thrusting swords or spears, on top of a 15% resistance to any slashing damage from things like scimitars. On top of all that, she also has a 20% resistance to magic, lightning, and holy damage, so it is not advised to use any of those. You can also proc Poison, Scarlet Rot, and Bleed on this boss with about a 252 value, which is a little bit higher than, say, Fulgor, which is fairly susceptible to ailments. And believe it or not, frost damage and sleep as well, but that will take a lot more to build up. It's perfectly viable to not utilize Shifting Earths for this boss, as long as you're able to get decent fire weapons. But if you do want to, the Mountaintop and the Crater will be some of your best bets. The Crater will work the best for building up the resistance to frost and being able to increase your damage whenever frost is procced. I had the most success with the Crater myself to be able to get a good fire weapon to pick from and a guaranteed legendary after defeating the Magma Worm. Niclatio, or Noclateo, whichever one, could also work if you're able to get a good fire legendary weapon or just any good fire weapon in general and duplicate it if you want it to dual wield. Duplicating it in the southeast corner of that Shifting Earth, if you were not aware. The Rotting Woods probably wouldn't be the best bet because fire is going to be your most efficient route of taking down the boss, and any sort of build up that you can do to do damage over time is more nice than something you should prioritize. One of the main events that can cause a lot of problems if you get it procced at the wrong time is the Augur invasion. I've had that a fair amount of times decide to happen when the rain is moving in and do damage over time while trying to fight Augur. With that being a possibility, it won't end your run necessarily, but it'll definitely put a damper on it. So be prepared to try to bum rush that if that should happen. Also, a pro tip for these forts is to check every chest that can spawn. There's also this bonus one up here for this layout, and there's another one that has a tower that is also across from where you can find the map. It's a little pillar that you can't fully see the top of, but if you jump onto the highest point that's closest to it, without surge sprinting and then try to double jump up, you can climb up there, and there's another chest up there that can also spawn a stone sword key. Let me know if you had any questions or wanted any clarification on anything brought up earlier, and I will let the rest of this play out, and you're more than welcome to watch the rest of this or skip to the very end where I'll go over some of the boss moves and how to avoid them and just general tips for the fight. have unfortunately reached the clip limit in Share Factory, so this will all have to be one go of it. But any weapons that will have an AoE effect and fire, so Mogwin Spear, Cranial Vessel, Candle Stand, work really, really well for removing the frost from this phase of the fight. So as you could see before, she started out in essentially phase 2 like the other Everdarks, and started just with the dive bomb attack. Halfway through, then puts the ice armor on her, and all of her attacks are a lot more frostbite buildup and damage that you have to watch out for. But going back to that, the armor is on the head, body, wings, and tail. And if you can remove all of those at the same time before she can reapply them, then it will cause a stagger and do a ton of damage. So the Mogwin Spear, Ash of War, or the Candle Stand, or any super, super large fire spell will serve you really well to shred all that and then do bonus damage and get a stagger in. Essentially, there are a lot more things on the ground that you have to watch out for with this new phase, and anytime that there isn't something happening and you're under the legs, it's more than likely that she is rearing up, and you will want to get out of there as quickly as you can before an AoE attack comes down from above. But essentially, just try to dodge how you had been in the beginning part of the fight. There's not a ton of variance in the move aside from just a few extra dodges that you have to work in. Run diagonally here and go through that with a dodge, and that will alleviate that damage and frost buildup. And then yeah, just shred as much armor as you can. Don't get too greedy with it, because it will definitely punish, especially like that. And yeah, let me know down in the comments if you have any other questions, comments, anything else that you'd like to see, information that you wish I would have gone over. Just trying to get my grip and formula down, and want to be able to help the community as best as I can, because any extra knowledge that is passed down benefits the rest of the community.
PlayStation